Are we a serious military or not? Well, no, we're not half the time. But let's look at Mark Carney. You know what drives me crazy about this is that they all talk a good talk about wanting to support our men and women in uniform, about wanting to support the military. Oh, we just love our military. Conservatives generally are better on national defense, at least since Pierre Trudeau. Actually, and before Pierre Trudeau, the Liberals were better on national defense than the Conservatives were, actually. But since then, of course, the Liberals have been very, very anti defense. But the Conservatives like to say they're so much better for national defense, except when it comes to actually buying the equipment. They did buy substantial equipment for the Army and the Air Force during the Harper years, but they reneged on their promise to buy the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35. And that was a crucial and very historical mistake. But you know what drives me crazy is when these guys, these politicians, force military members to stand behind them when they make political announcements. It's disgusting. So here's Mark Carney with his chief of defense staff, who I just shake my head. This is clearly a DEI hire, and his minister of national defense, who hasn't really got a clue in hell about military matters, David McGuinty. And here he is standing in front of a bunch of military people who were ordered to stand there looking like they're 100% behind Mark Carney. And listen to Mark Carney describe what he's going to do with $9.3 billion of extra defense money. He doesn't know. He's already said it's going to go, and we'll get to that in a minute. It's going to go to rearming Europe. Listen to this.
Hello, Prime Minister. Nathaniel Dove with Global News. You said during the campaign with regards to national defense, you don't start with a percentage of GDP or what can be an arbitrary figure when it comes to national defense. Can you explain why you changed your position so that now we are hitting 2% much faster than you originally said?
Well, actually, it is the same position. It's looking at all of the elements on the ground, starting with the very basic elements of the foundations of the Canadian forces. Pay, the lodging, munitions. I'm being simple, but I could give you a very large.
When Mark Carney starts to stutter, much like Justin Trudeau, it's because he's either lying or he doesn't have a clue in hell what he's talking about. Probably both in this case. But here he is trying to explain what he's going to do with the money, and he doesn't know.
Just the day in, day out experience, both of the individuals, the support they have, the support our veterans have, but as well the equipment that they have on in protecting us on the battlefield. We see the strains, for example, with respect to the relatively limited operational readiness of some of our aircraft broadly speaking, with respect to all that's being called on our military right now, including with the fires. And I want to full credit to the two individuals and the people they represent behind me for the full support they have given in massive evacuations and timely evacuations working with the provinces. But we need to build up that capacity, and seeing that, knowing that, and knowing we can act on it makes sense to act now. And then the second thing is the scale of the what I would call the enhancing our military capabilities across cyber, AI, critical minerals, other.
Holy hell. Are you listening to this? Enhancing our military capabilities above and beyond AI? What the hell is he talking about? Artificial intelligence has somehow got something to do with this increased defense budget? And critical minerals? What is that? What is he talking about? Donald Trump just announced this morning that he's going to get all of his critical minerals from China now, after he said he's going to get them from Ukraine. He's never even considered getting critical minerals from Canada. So what is Mark Carney talking about? What does the military have to do with critical minerals? This man is so muddled in his head, so lacking comprehension about what a military is actually supposed to do, that he doesn't make any sense. in what he says.
Elements of that. There is an immediate need or immediate opportunity now. It happens that puts us in a position where we're not just at 2, we're above 2, probably round it to 2.1% of GDP, okay, for what it's worth. Last thing, if I can say, is that I did make the point about, within the context of a broader negotiation within NATO, about longer-term targets, and that's something that's under discussion, is that we're going to be guided by what's necessary. Again, we're going to keep the same principle, not to satisfy, all due respect to them, NATO accountants, some magic number. It is about the results.
He managed to drone on for, 2 or 3 minutes there without ever coming near to answering the question. Because none of it makes any sense. He's going to use military spending to fight forest fires? Wildfires, which of course he attributes all to climate change. He's going to use the military to protect our critical minerals and AI. I don't know what in the hell he's talking. Excuse my language, I shouldn't be saying that, but I'm sorry. This is nonsense. It's balderdash. Interestingly enough, so Mark Carney's talking about 2% of the GDP, right? He talked about that this week. He promised by the end of the fiscal year, we are going to be spending 2% of our GDP on the military. What does that amount to in real cash? Well, it comes to $9.3 billion more in defense spending. Sounds like a great thing. I am an ex-military member, a former officer in the Canadian Air Force, Royal Canadian Air Force now, thank God, as it was rebranded. I've always loved the military. My father was in the military. I've had so many good friends in the military, some of whom are still in the military. So I always support defense spending if it's used in the right way. So Carney's talking about $9.3 billion more for national defense. Here he is talking about $200 billion more to rearm Europe. Listen to this. It's hard to believe. Nobody is talking about this. Why? Mark Carney wants to rearm Europe so they can what? Fight a war with Russia and we can get into a nuclear confrontation. A nuclear holocaust is what it'll be. Is that what he's up to? Because Keir Starmer, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, is a madman who constantly is giving missiles to Ukraine so they can target Russian sites. Just a couple of weeks ago, they came that close to hitting a nuclear stockpile in Russia, which would have ignited a nuclear war between Russia and NATO. And guess what? We're a member of NATO, so we would be there too. Keir Starmer has talked about getting ready for a war with Russia. Keir Starmer is such an idiot. He's got more admirals than battleships in the Royal Navy. He has more horses than tanks in the British Army. And he's talking about fighting Russia. The same with President Emmanuel Macron from France. He's talking about invading Russia, fighting the Russians over the war in Ukraine. France can't defend its own borders. France is a military joke. But here's Mark Carney being precisely honest about where he wants to spend your money. He wants to rearm Europe. And Europe, of course, is the place where 2 world wars have already started. They started in Europe and they spread to the whole world. And Mark Carney wants to rearm the continent so they can get into another war?
Are actively seeking to strengthen transatlantic security, particularly by becoming a participant in Rearm Europe. This will help diversify our military suppliers with reliable European partners and integrate the Canadian defence industry as full participants in 150 billion euros of Europe's rearmament program. To these ends, the Canada-EU summit later this month will be more important than ever. And Canada will arrive at this summit with a plan to lead, with new investments to build our strength in service of our values. This will include our support for a new NATO defense industrial pledge, which will be negotiated at the NATO summit. The Defense Industrial Pledge encompasses both assets and infrastructure that support our defense goals. Canada is confident that our economic strategy and our many strategic resources, from critical minerals to cyber, will make major contributions to NATO security. We will support tangible commitments from our allies to provide NATO with the necessary resolve to deter aggression and protect against all adversaries in all domains. Our fundamental goal in all of this is to protect Canadians, not to satisfy NATO accountants.
No, your fundamental goal is to defend Europe, to rearm Europe, to intensify the potential for NATO to start a nuclear war. That is your intent, Mark Carney. This has nothing to do with securing Canada's borders. This has nothing to do with securing Canada's national defense. This has nothing to do with helping out the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. This has everything to do with Mark Carney's friends in Europe. $200 billion? He wants a blank check to the Europeans. That's what Mark Carney is all about. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I am going to keep this station on the air. I am going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth, because that's all I have left. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible, as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. And that's why we're here today. I'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place, 10 a.m. This has been David KRAYDEN, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Can't handle the truth.
Resolve to resist.